Hello there, my name is John and I am a nobody. We are off to the snowy slopes of Norway for this one, and a wonderful experience recording an album for Aldelona. I would like to come up with a compound noun for lovely Norwegians, because I've only met nice Norwegians and I'm still working on it. So there's something very special about listening to a 4-track recording and bass, drums, guitar and vocals, and you can split them all and listen to one track at a time. Excuse me. And Phil Brown brought such a recording with him to the recording session, and it was of Jimi Hendrix recording Foxy Lady, and it was something else to listen to that vocal track, just that one separated vocal track, and with the breathing and everything. It was very intimate and unforgettable. So we were in the town of Holden, which was very cold. It was during the winter. And one of the few benefits of being a cigarette smoker or a roll-up smoker is that you have to go outside to the corridor to smoke. Well, luckily, Phil Brown, the the producer of the record, was also a roll-up smoker, and I spent a lot of time with him. He'd worked with a lot of my heroes, many of whom are on this little channel, including Paul Kossoff, James Jamerson, twice, nearly everybody you can imagine, the Wailers, all my heroes. He'd worked with all of them, and that was really fascinating to listen to his wonderful stories about working with legends. And he told me that working with Jameson was great the first time, and the second time was awful because he'd been incapacitated. He'd worked with the Wailers and had many adventures. Once he said his doorbell rang at home in London, and there was a truck outside, or a lorry, and a flatbed, and on it there were 3 big steel drums, oil drums. And he asked the driver, well, what's inside? And the driver said, it's water from Kingston Bay, so that the whalers can wash their hair. So they'd flown it all the way over from Kingston Bay so they could have a good hair wash. He'd also done the live record for Island Records of Bob Marley and the Wailers. I think it was the Lyceum concert, the live one, with the hit single No Woman, No Cry. And he told me this amazing story that the backing vocals had not recorded properly, or not recorded at all. So everything was fine, but they had to do the backing vocals all over again, which meant that they had to find a couple of girls from London with Jamaican roots to re-record the backing vocals, because otherwise they wouldn't have them. And the Wailers had already left back to Jamaica. Island Records were an amazing company. They were run by a a white Jamaican called Chris Blackwell, who had brought the company to fruition and introduced the world to Bob Marley and the Wailers and a lot of reggae acts. And Phil Brown told me that he'd actually cut the tape for I Shot the Sheriff, which became a hit, and Eric Clapton covered it. And he said he went into the cutting room. In those days, they used tape, which was not digital, it was tape, and you cut it with a razor blade. And normally, if you wanted to make a cut, you just needed 1 or 2 cuts with a razor blade. But in Phil Brown's case, he had to go into the studio, go into the cutting room, and one of the Wailers gave him a substance to smoke. And while he was working on the cut, a seed popped out, and as fate would have it, landed directly onto the tape. So it set fire to the tape. And so instead of doing 1 small cut or 2 small cuts to the track, Phil Brown had to completely repair the tape that was on fire, you know. So he put the fire out, did I think it was 30 cuts, and they only discovered this years later, decades later, when they went to the vault and looked at, you know, the archive of this song and found that it had like 30 cuts on it. Everybody was, or some people were banging on the doors, you know, from the Wailers saying, why is it taking so long? And poor Phil was, yeah, I'll be ready in a minute, as he was attempting to salvage his work. The whole experience with Phil Brown was great. He was the only producer I've ever worked with who told me, get in there into the studio and perform. Nobody had ever said that to me before. It had always been go and play your bass. This time it was go in there and perform. And it was just a wonderful experience, which I will probably mention in another story, because otherwise this one will be too long. But just to be talking to somebody one-to-one who was a legend and had worked with legends was an amazing experience for me. And he's the name to remember this week, Phil Brown from Island Records. Well, I'll keep this one short. I've been a bit poorly of late, but I'm getting better. So thank you very much for watching, and take care of yourself and those you love. And I hope to see you in the next one. Bye for now, and Tschüssikowski.